Hey, my creative friends. My name is Shannon from shannonstudio.com, and I'm here to talk about a creative life, throw out some creative life tips, anything that will help us be more creative and to, further us on that journey forward in being having a creative life, being creative. Hey, Trisha. Hey, Joan. So, let's see, today saw some more pictures of Cassie. One of my daughters, Cassandra, took some of my fabrics when she was home and made dresses, and she made one for her sister, Samantha, and Samantha tried it on and sent me a picture, just cute, and just, Cassie just wanted to sew and try these things out, and she didn't use a pattern, and, because she didn't want to use a pattern, and just thought she's just going to push through it, and had an idea and just pushed through it to do it. And it was, Samantha was cute, just, smiling with it. And also Cassie did her dresses, and then she did masks to match her dresses. I'm thinking, on point, girl. So that was fun to see. Let's see. Okay, I was reading about in Innovator's DNA book. And in the book, they're talking about, hey, Rose, talking about Steve Jobs' process and what he was doing when he was inventing computers and making, doing products for Apple. And one of the quotes of this book, Innovator's DNA, was, on Steve Jobs' ability to think differently, first, we see his innovative ideas didn't spring fully formed in his head as if they were a gift from an idea fairy. And I laughed when I read that. Just didn't spring there because there was an idea fairy, that some imaginary being going, whew, and there you go. Some magical powers, though I do kind of think there's a little bit of magic in it, but it's not like he sat around waiting for that to happen. It wasn't like most people who have ideas and who are creative, actively creative, just sit there and wait for something to come to them. There are things that you can do to stir that process, and it's a needful process that you have to realize. The idea generation is going to be work, and I think some people want to put that idea out there that it's magical, that it's, this being or genius will come and do it so that they don't have to do the work that's associated with it. I sure would like an idea fairy that just came and did that for me. It would be way easier. Hey, boyfriend. So as I was reading through this section of his book, I wrote through some of the things that I found were in the process that he went through to come up with ideas, and particularly move forward with the idea of doing the personal computer. One of the ideas was for it to be quiet, and such a simple idea, to be quiet, to just not have this hum. I remember as a teenager going to my dad's work. He worked for Great Western Savings and Loan. And I remember going one time and looking at the computers in there, and it filled a huge room. I mean, it was just like these massive computers. It was really interesting, and they were loud. And so, it was the age of bringing personal computers, and they wanted them to be quiet, and that was his idea. And so, we've talked about ideas can be solutions. They can be something, solution from a problem, or something that we, overheard and want to build on. So basically he has this idea, and that he has a demand. So we have a demand, meaning I want it to be quiet, or, some other kind of thing that we have. So Steve Jobs had a demand. Then he had conviction that that demand could be met somehow. And I think that's kind of where the visionary part comes in, when you think something can happen when it's not possible. And at that point in time, it wasn't possible to have a computer because it needed a fan to keep it cool. And it wasn't possible at that point to have it, have a computer without a fan. So, but he had conviction that it could happen. So he had a demand, he had a conviction, and then he went about searching for people who could make that happen, who could help him get what he wanted, and then get them on board with his vision and idea. And so, like, he went searching, and he was usually searching for people outside of his own industry. And then he, then when on one of the things that he relied on the computer was a calligraphy class that he took years before, 10 years before. He said he took this calligraphy class, and it just, he dived into typography and all of it, and he just thought it was beautiful, and just, it really affected him. And so, the process of learning, and then ideas and stuff will come over a time span. It doesn't, because you're connecting different things. And so that was like 10 years prior, so he decided he's going to have all these fonts, and they can kern and leading and all these things, because he had learned typography. And he made the point that personal computers have this, and that they probably, all personal computers have that, and it probably wouldn't have happened because other computers copied their computers, and he did it because of that class that he took years before. There has to be, I think, when you have an idea, and not the idea of idea fairies coming to you, but you have to kind of have like these daydream believers, like people. That monkey song comes to mind, daydream believers. Anyways, it comes to mind. But daydream believers, those who believe in your dream, those who believe that it can happen. And that's the process he basically went through. So it wasn't this magical thing, it was this work thing. It was this pursuing. And in the book, A Technique for Producing Ideas, he says, the production of ideas is just as definite a process as the production of Fords. That in this production, the mind follows an operative technique which can be learned and controlled. So there are some things that are genetic in the creative sphere, but most of it is not. So that means that it can be learned. And then and I didn't know about ideas. I remember being younger and having ideas and then wanting to not share them, not to let them go, because I was afraid somebody might take my idea. But then as you learn this process, it frees you, because you go, okay, somebody's going to copy me. It's just what happens. But you can control that process. You can bring more ideas to yourself and to the table, because you know that process and you've learned that process. And so you don't have to be scared that it's not going to ever happen for you again. Because in the beginning, when you're not used to having ideas or that many, you go, wow, this is a good idea. And then you think you're never going to have one again. So there is a process in this idea generation, idea producing, that it can be learned and controlled. So what are some of those things? Well, an idea has like a lifespan, like a life cycle. It goes through a process. It is in the Time magazine, The Science of Creativity. When Leonardo da Vinci came up with an idea, he devised an experiment to test it. And when his experiment showed that a theory was flawed, he abandoned it. He abandoned his theory and sought a new one. So far, what we see is that you get an idea, you learn things. You learn things previously, if you keep learning, then you have ideas and knowledge to put together. Some specific ideas, some general ideas. You start connecting dots, making combinations. So you learn, then you experiment. You try things out. You take risks. You test. You practice. You practice some of the things that you learned previously, and try those things and practice. So then if the experiment doesn't work, then you can abandon it for good and move on, or you can abandon it for a little while and come back to it and see if it works. Then practice, practice, practice. I always want to throw in that practice because we have to go through that thought thread of an idea. The idea's thought thread, what? Would this work? Well, I could think about how it worked, or I could get up and try it and see if it will work. And we kind of do that on a small scale. So like if the window, the wind keeps blowing the window shut, we decide we'll put something in front of it and see, to prop the door open. But sometimes that thing blows it to, blows the window shut or the door shut anyway. So then you go and try another experiment, put something heavier in front of it. So we do those kind of idea generation things all the time. We just don't realize that we can purposely go after something and purposely put that into not kind of daily things like the window or the door, thing, example, but that you could put it into, I want to try this, and I want to use, I saw on Rose's Facebook page, she had taken, some more gum wrappers or kind of trash wrappers and folded them together and made a purse. And so actually doing things. What was I going to say? Oh, I was talking to Wade a couple days ago, and we were talking about his work. He was taking a Skillshare class, so continuing to learn. And he was in the Skillshare class. She said, do a pin board and put all the pins that you think represent what you like, your style, how it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to go together. Just put things on there you love. And there were some other teaching things, but so he wanted me to look at his board and see if there were any commonalities, because she said, look for some commonalities, look for patterns. So he's looking at it, and as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking he really likes this tactile thing, some of the things that he did. So when I was talking to him, I said, well, why don't you actually get some stuff? Like get some cellophane, colored cellophane, and get some, just some different things, and start playing with them, experimenting with them, and see what happens. So he's been doing that the last few days, and he got lights, he got a whole bunch of stuff, and candies, flowers, chalks, and so he's been sending me pictures of this process, the experiment process, and I'm just like, this is so fun. It's so cool because I kind of, we talked about, I had an idea, but that's where it sat for me. It just sat in my head as an idea, and he pursued it and is pushing himself and trying, because he did it for one day, then showed me some things, and then it's like, some back and forth discussion about it, and then the next day, it's like even better, and then, sent me some this morning, it's even better, and he keeps pushing, and so he's actually taking the idea and making it tangible and moving it forward. So he's learning, he's practicing, he's experimenting, there's no abandoning right now. He's going to probably abandon some things when he starts to further the process. So he's taking some into Photoshop, putting text with it, doing some things. So some things he'll abandon because it's like, oh, that didn't quite work like I liked. But some things he's letting sit and seeing what he's going to do with it a little bit later. And so what happens in this idea thread, the life cycle of an idea, is that when we continue to work at it, it starts to become a habit. It starts to be something that we do on a regular basis. And when we start to do it on a regular basis, that's when it gets really fun. That's when we start to see how our mind really works, and that's where the control part starts to come in, because then once we get in that habit, then our ideas increase. Then we start to have that ability to go, okay, I know this process. Let me go learn some things, and then let me go solve a problem. Let me have a vision. Let me have some conviction in something. Let me go experiment. Let me practice. Let me, leave this here, abandon it for a little while, or, all these things. We know that if we jump in there, in this life cycle, at some point, it's going to start to increase, and it's going to start to move us forward in a direction. So we don't have to be scared of it. We don't have to We don't have to think that we can't do it. There's so many people that I'm not creative, I don't have any ideas. No, you just haven't practiced. You haven't worked it. Here's a quote from a technique for producing ideas. And it goes with this idea that an operative technique which can be learned and controlled, and that its effective use is just as much a matter of practice in technique as is the effective use of any tool. So it's basically saying ideas are a tool. The process you go through, they're just tools to get to the idea. They're just tools to get to another tool to use it in some pursuit that you have. So we don't have to think, none of us have to think we don't have ideas. We use ideas all the time. We just haven't pushed ourselves to further those ideas and take those ideas down a more creative lane. We're just using our ideas in our everyday life to solve little problems. But you can take that process specifically and go down a certain lane. So if you want to learn something like watercolor, or you want to learn to cook, or you want to learn how to do stained glass, or you want to, learn woodworking. I mean, you want to learn how to write. You want to learn how to, there's just so much to do out there that you can take this process of producing ideas and, just run with it. Jump in. So that's the thought today, is to remember there's no idea fairy. It's you. It's you doing the work. It's you doing the practice, you doing the experimenting and all of it. And then you'll start to see you can control it and increase it. So that's the thought for today. So remember, you have a creative heartbeat. Listen for it, and I will be back tomorrow. Bye.